All right, so here's another example that might inspire you to your game. So I just created a very quick little jouster. So this little knight, if I click on the button that says start the joust, assumably if I continued on with this, I would have another jouster perhaps, and they could be moving towards each other. But I just want to show you some of the things that you can do. So if I click on the button, presumably I have a event listener. And again, if I spent more time on it, I try and figure out how to keep that image from moving in the background. But you can definitely see that the dude is moving. And I also use, this is all CSS positioning that I am utilizing JavaScript for. So let me kind of walk you through what I did here. And then I'll give you a sample of this code as well so you can play with it. But in the first place, we have create a click event for the start button. So when the user clicks on the start button, then we're going to, I lost that, okay. So then we're going to start a timer. And the timer using set interval is going to call this function, and it's going to call it every second until I stop the timer, which eventually will be done down here. So when we click the button, the timer will start, run this function every 1,000 milliseconds, which is every second. And so then I have some variables that I set up just so I can keep track of some things in the course of the program. One, I'm keeping track of how many times was this interval called. So remember I said every 1,000 milliseconds, every second this function is being called. And so what I chose to do just for this example was after 6 times, so times is keeping track of how many, so after 6 seconds, basically, every second, this function is being run. And after 6 times, then clear the interval and stop playing. So that's why the jouster stops in my particular example at that point in time. So, and then return just says don't do anything more in this function. At this point, just go back to where you came from and stop. Don't continue on. And then at the end of this function, then every time it goes in the function, I'm iterating times by 1. So that way I can make sure that this function is only run 6 times. So that was the purpose of the 6, and that's the purpose of this particular variable. All right, so now I have a way to stop my timer, and the way I'm doing it in this case is I'm using just the fact that we've called this function 6 times. All right, POS is keeping track of if you refer back to your positioning in CIS 130, position is a way for us to keep track of the left position of an element. And so if we set this div, let's see, position equals 0, let's just walk through it. So position is 0, and position is going to keep track of where this div is currently exists on the screen. So let's see what happens. Every time we run this function, we're going to generate a random number. So this is going to return a random number. And then we're going to ignore this because we are assuming that it's one of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. We're going to add that random number to 0. So this is going to keep going up, which is why we've got forward movement of our knight. And so whatever our random number is, whether it be 5, so 0 plus 5 means that the left position of this knight is going to be position 5 instead of 0. And so that's what we're doing here. So if you look up your positioning properties from CSS days, then what we'll see is by utilizing our CSS style, remember that this is how we use any of our CSS styles that we've learned from 130, and we position the left position, whatever the new number is, 0 plus 5, or what we said it was 5. And then in order for position left to work, we have to have the PX. And so if you look back, remember, we're just writing CSS with JavaScript. So if I want to set a position left of something, I have to give it like 30 PX or something like that, which will change the positioning. So this line, utilizing positions and position left, we'll move our knight randomly to the right. Here I'm just keeping track of whether or not times is even or odd. Remember, this is mod, MOD, so that's back from your 120 days.
So mod is the modulus, which is giving us how much, if we divide times, in other words, the first times is 0, next time it's 1. If we divide that number by 2, what will our remainder be? So if it's even, if 2 divided by 2 is going to be, there's no remainder, which was what 0 will be, then we know we've got an even number. And all I'm doing there is setting the degree for my transform property. So again, if I look up transform in CSS, this is what's moving the guy up and down to make it look like he's moving. And so I use the transform property. Again, that's just a CSS property. I had to look up how to utilize it in JavaScript, but I found out that if I do .transform equals and then the rotate, that's how it's moving up and down. And so then I've just plotted in whether it's -15, which moves him up, or 15, which moves him down. So again, just manipulating CSS styles programmatically in JavaScript allows me to move him from the, let's see if I can find him again, from the, that's not it. That's your assignment. Anyway, you get the idea. So this is, I'll give you this code. I'm not going to give you the CSS because I'm going to let you play around with that. I don't want you copying what I've done. I just want to give you some inspiration on some other things that you might be able to do. So hopefully this inspires you.